Hi there. I'm glad that you tuned into my channel, Pines and Palms. I thought it would be fun to do a little video on the top 3 questions that I get asked about my solo travels. And the first one would be why I chose Mexico. And originally, Mexico was not my first choice. My first choice was going to be Greece, Spain, and then Portugal, where I was going to do a train ride from Greece to Spain and up to Portugal was the plan. And I was going to be doing it with a girlfriend, and I was going to be doing most of the planning, and she was completely content with kind of tagging along. But it became evident really early on that she was not prepared or equipped to deal with a trip this big. It was going to be a big, long trip, anywhere from 3 to 6 months was the plan. So I decided, okay, I have to do this alone. Going alone was never my plan, and I didn't want to do a trip that big all by myself. My first big solo trip out there. So I actually used ChatGPT to help me figure out where I wanted to go. I kind of plugged in, I wanted it to be beautiful. I wanted it to be inexpensive. I wanted there to be culture and friendly people. Also, being able to communicate was important. So going to a place where a lot of the people there already spoke English because my Spanish is no bueno. And beautiful beaches. But I also really wanted to be able to integrate into the community around me. I was going to be there for a long time. So I wanted to be a part of the community. I didn't want to be seen as just, a fly-by-night that's going to be there for a weeks-long vacation and then, never to be seen again. So being a part of the community was really, really important to me. And with all of that I plugged into ChatGPT, we chose Playa del Carmen. And that's how Mexico was chosen. Another big question that I get asked was, what was it like preparing for a trip like that? So I had just signed a lease on my apartment, so I knew that I was going to have 11 months to plan this trip, which is good and bad. It was a lot of time, and it was also a lot of time for me to get in my head and worry and kind of spiral about all the what ifs. I had never visited that part of Mexico when I decided that I was going to be living there for a while. So it was scary. It was scary. I had a lot of people going like, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you going there? Why aren't you happy in Oregon? Oregon is beautiful. And Oregon is very beautiful, and it is home, and all my family and friends are here. But I wanted something more. I knew I needed this trip, and it was very scary, especially as the time grew nearer and I only had a couple of months left back in the States. I really started to question myself and why am I doing this? At this point, it was so stressful and emotional, leaving everything behind, giving up my apartment, putting all of my things into storage, saying goodbye to all my friends and family. I really had to do some soul searching on why am I doing this anymore? Am I doing it just because I planned it for a year or because everybody already knew I was going? But I really did realize that I was doing it for myself. I've always wanted to travel. I want to see everything. I want to go everywhere. And I'd always kind of waited for a partner to be able to do that with me. And none of my partners were really able. And so I found myself waiting and waiting and waiting. And I'm like, I want to do this before I'm too old to not want to do this anymore. Travel can be exhausting. And I moved all around Playa del Carmen. So that in itself was exhausting, moving every month or two. So energy was a big factor in going when I did and how I did, because I'm like, I'm 47. I'm not getting any younger. I'm going to have to take this big leap all by myself. And I did, and it was amazing. And I have absolutely no regrets about where I went or how I spent my time there. I was able to really make friends with the other locals, the other tourists, everyone in between, the other people that were, solo traveling. You kind of find yourself running in these little circles of the people that you're meeting and the locals that you connect with, and even the people that run the shops and the stores. Once they start seeing you daily and for months and months, and they like, oh, okay, this lady's here for a while, they do get to be a lot more friendly, and they kind of do take you in. I wasn't staying at a resort. I was staying in a real authentic neighborhood, and it just ended up that all my friends were within a couple of blocks away from me, was where they lived. So it was easy to integrate and be part of the community. And most of the people that I encountered, their English was far better than my Spanish. So that was also really awesome and helpful, and kind of eased my fears about how am I gonna be able to communicate other than through Google Translate or something like that. Now, the second part of that question is, was Mexico itself scary? Absolutely not. I don't think I was ever scared in Mexico. All of my places were very secure. The streets were safe. Of course, I practiced as much universal precaution as I could, as far as, not walking by myself at 2 o'clock in the morning on a dark, deserted street, things like that, kind of going in pairs. But I felt so comfortable there that fear was never really at the forefront of my mind. There was no scary things that ever happened. Not that they don't happen, they do. They just didn't happen to me, luckily. And the third question that I get asked the most is, was it hard to come back to the US after being gone for so long? And the answer is yes, it was absolutely hard, and maybe not in the ways that I expected it to be. Of course, it was good to be able to reconnect with my friends and my family, but not only was it cold, but just the general pace of American life is much, much faster than it was in Mexico. It was a more peaceful kind of solitude there. The way that I moved through the world was really, really different than how I moved through the world here. Like, for instance, I walked to get my groceries. I walked almost everywhere that I went in Mexico. And so I would only buy what I could carry, I was way more methodical about how I moved through life there. And the amount of consumption that we have as Americans, and material things, and the amount of peace that may or may not bring some of us. To me, it brings me less peace, needing more things. I found that keeping it really simple in Mexico brought me a lot more joy, even having less, or going without things, or figuring out a way to be more creative with the things that I did have. That was really fun and inspiring to me, instead of just hopping on Amazon and hitting a button. So that was one of the surprising things about coming back to the United States. It was pretty surprising, and it took a lot of acclimating, along with the weather, to getting back and reintegrating into my normal kind of a life here. Those are probably the main three things that stick out that people always want to know about. And if you're thinking about travel, do it. Figure out a way, even if it's just for a week at a time, clearing your head, changing your view, changing your perspective. Sometimes this is just about changing your environment for a little while. So I'm all about solo travel and traveling safely in the places that we go. And I hope that I can inspire some of you to do the same. So thanks for following, and I hope you like my channel, Pines and Palms, A Diary of a Double Life.